All right. How you doing, Philip?
I am doing super duper. How are you
Good.
doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you all out there today. It's kind of a little chilly this week, so I had some sweater weather.
Yes, it's a little chilly, a little cool. Had the space heater going in the office yesterday, and probably later today I will.
Yeah. Probably, yeah, you got that little corner. You got a lot of windows in there.
It's breezy.
Cool it down quite a bit. Yeah, I can get it. Yeah, I don't normally wear sweaters because I get
Right.
really hot really fast, and so even on a cold day I'll be shedding that thing. But no, the last couple days it's been nice. I mean, I like wearing sweaters. I just get too hot in them.
It's not your thing though.
But it's been good the last couple days.
Good.
I was even in my car driving with my sweater on. Normally I take it off because you can control the thermostats. But no, it was good. It was good. So, do we still have one more in us? I mean, because I've got my garden bed. The dirt's ready. Everything is prepped, but there's no plants in it.
Yeah, I mean we still have one more in us.
Oh, we got one more. I don't want one more. I want spring.
I think I read the other day the average last frost here in the Triad area is something along we're on mid-April, so around
All right.
tax day.
Easter time. Yeah.
So taxes. So just think about having to pay the government your fair share, and that's when you can put your garden in. So yeah, around middle of April will be our last frost day until the fall of the year. But you still can't be surprised by like one of these
Weird
late
things, yeah.
spring freezes that all the apple farmers around and the peach farmers down in South Carolina fret about, like something in late April or early May that just will
And I
come
get
in.
it. You can't do anything about it. That happens.
You get this like one shot of ultra cold air. It's just like May 2nd it's 83 degrees. May 3rd you wake up and it's 25.
Yeah.
And
And I like on those days. You see those apple orchards down there, and they start spraying water on it
Yeah.
to get ice all over
they
it.
encase everything in water to freeze it.
And they tell them that the ice on it actually works as a better insulator. That for the cold to go through the ice to get to the orange, it's harder to do because water freezes at 32 degrees, so it's 32 degrees, and so you don't get that. If you got teens or something, that teens doesn't get to the fruit,
Right.
the new fruit, and so it's one of those weird counterintuitive things. But you want it to freeze in the spring to protect that. So
I know when I was living up in Henderson County up in apple country, where up near Hendersonville, a lot of apple orchards around us, and 28 degrees was at like 3 or 4 hours was the kill spot.
Right.
It could take getting down to 30 and 29 degrees, but once it got to 28 or below and it was there for 3 or 4 hours, then there was a big worry.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it's different for different fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. But yeah, I would if you've already started them indoors, you can do that and then get them ready to go. But I still think you might want to wait a bit.
All right, sounds good. Well, speaking of fruits and vegetables, I got our Facebook question. I know it's not going to be a deep theological one, but we're going to make a point with it later. But our deep theological question is: what food did you hate, but your parents always made you eat it? Now, I'm gonna start with a good one because everybody's going to say some sort of funky vegetable. We'll get there eventually.
Right.
But I didn't like peaches. Like my mom always was like, we're going to get peaches. I'm not a peach person.
Wow.
Kim's a peach person. My family, they're peach people. I just don't like peaches.
I love me some South Carolina peaches.
I bet you.
And some
not Georgia ones, just
North Carolina Sandhill peaches. Those
Yeah,
are good. Georgia
yeah.
peaches are fine too. I like peaches.
But
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I just couldn't handle the peaches. I just one of those.
You know what I really like to do
Yeah.
is drive through Gaffney, South Carolina, and point out the giant peach off the side of the road there. That's the water tower.
The big water tower
Yeah.
that's there? Absolutely. Yeah, because we see that when we go through there. But how about you? What kind of foods did you, when you were a kid, you're like, no, that's not for me?
Well, I gotta be thankful for my mom. She never really made me eat things that I didn't like. Like it was like one of those things. She wasn't like the miser, like you got to eat this. Put my head in a whatever you call that in the wrestling world. I can't think of it. A headlock and like shove it in there. She always, it was never anything like that. But green peas is something that I can't understand the nature of green peas, and
peas.
why anybody would want to eat green peas.
Well, you know, when people do like up in New England, they did a lot of split pea soup. You
Okay.
know? And so it was that green color made out of peas, and I'm like, nope.
No, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, green peas are my thing. I like a lot of different things, but green peas are my deal.
Green peas. See, now my mom would like cook lots of stuff. Like we always had varieties of everything, and she would cook like Brussels sprouts.
I love Brussels sprouts.
See, I knew you look like a Brussels sprouts kind of guy. But my mom also liked to get us to eat stuff using reverse psychology. So, but it was like blatant reverse. Like when you, as a kid, when you're like, I know what you're doing, Mom, you know, but she would be like, oh, look at all those Brussels sprouts. Oh, you all need some. We're like, no, Mom, I don't want those. Like, if you don't eat them, I'm going to eat them all. And we're like, well, you can eat them all, Mom. And so we had a lot of Brussels sprout fights. So.
Yeah, well, I can understand. Had Brussels sprouts the other night. 2 nights ago, had Brussels sprouts, I believe it was.
About that. And you get older, your palates change stuff,
Yep.
and there's more of that stuff. Like when I was a kid, I didn't like hot dogs, and I didn't like watermelon. I didn't like watermelon because of the seeds. I didn't know how to handle them, and I was always scared. Like, you know, when people make jokes like, hey, you know, if you swallow that seed, it's going to grow in your stomach and stuff. As a kid, I was very literal on things. I didn't understand a lot of stuff like that. So I didn't know, and it terrified me. And so I just could not get to a comfortable place eating watermelon.
Yeah.
And I just did not like hot dogs. I just did not know why everybody was eating hot dogs. Now, today, like, you give me a nice beef hot dog, and I like that, and I prefer like a bratwurst or something like that. But I was just not a hot dog fan when I was a kid. And then my kids all loved hot dogs.
Yeah.
So we had them all the time. I'm like,
No hot dogs. I like hot dogs. My boys ate a lot of hot dogs when they were growing up. Both of them went through spells where that's the only thing they wanted was, and what Carter would call a dot dog. He wanted a dot dog, and now Carter will turn his nose up at a hot dog, but Jackson still he'll consume his body weight in corn dogs if he could. So if we just let him to his own devices.
Yeah, Ransom was a corn dog consumer. Cambry, when she was younger, she didn't like hot dogs. She liked cold dogs.
Cold dogs.
She would say, "Hey, can I have a cold dog?" Because I mean, I guess the nice thing about hot dogs is they're all pre-cooked.
They're prepared. Yeah.
Yeah. So hot dogs are ready to consume out of the refrigerator. And she had a lady that watched her some, and that was something that they would do. They would just pull the bag out, open it up, and hand it to you. And she would literally walk around her house like 3-year-old Cambry with a cold dog in each hand and just be munching them. And she could put down like 4 or 5 cold dogs. Like she's like, I'm like, what are you eating so many of those? And some of that may have been, her food allergies. When she was young, she couldn't have eggs, she couldn't have milk, she couldn't have anything with peanut products, she couldn't have any, and so you think about all the things with those, her body craved nutrients, but she couldn't get it in normal places that kids would get it. And so we just think that her body was just trying to, fill up with nutrients somewhere. And so she would just crave, and she would just put down. I mean, she could out eat Ransom when it came to a hot dog eating contest.
You should have taken her to
Joey Chestnut.
Joey Jaws Chestnut. She could have maybe gave him a run for his money.
It would have been something. We had started grooming her at that time. And now, you talk about that, and she's like, I don't even believe that happened. And I'm like, oh, it happened.
Yeah.
We got somebody online telling us that one of Slocum's telling us that they don't like corn.
Corn.
Oh,
I love me some bicolor corn fresh from the garden.
Yeah, some corn is just what you need. I mean, if you can't, I like corn season. Like when you're driving around and then there's just some guy that's in his front yard.
Yeah.
That's got a sign that looked like their kids made a lemonade stand or something. And they're like, here's some corn. And, and you just pull over and he's like, here's a bag of it. How much? He's like, $1. $1 for a bag of corn tastes better than going to the grocery store and buying whatever, some gold
5
corn
ears for $1 or whatever.
Yeah. And I'm like, $1? Did you do something? I don't care what they did to the corn. $1 corn at some guy's stand in his front yard is better than anything else. But once again, if that's your thing, right?
Corn. I love corn.
I do too. I love me some corn on the cob and getting it all slathered up. Now, I got a corn story. I know it's not a corny story, but it's a corny story. But my in-laws have been here this weekend, and we had a good time with them. And my in-laws are very well put together people. Like, our house was a house full of boys, so it was designed to be destroyed. Anything that was nice or valuable, if it was around, it was going to be broken, and we probably broke it. And then we probably glued it back together and sat it back up and thought, maybe she won't.
Nobody will know.
That's there. And so our house is very utilitarian, but my in-laws' houses, everything was, matched and nice, and it was beautiful and great. And so I was always a little awkward there because it was different than the way I was. And everything was prim and proper about everything except for corn. When it came to corn, they had their little corn, what they called dubers, and they stick in the side little handles. And then they had a communal corn stick of butter. It was a stick of butter that would sit in the middle of the table, and everybody would just take their corn and stick it on it and wrap it all on that. But it was a communal butter thing that everybody shared. They kind of had a lazy Susan that you could spin around. And everybody would take their corn, hot corn, stick it on the butter like a whole stick, and then butter up their whole corn, and then they would just zip it around, and the next person would do it. And I'm like, what just happened? We're sharing one big huge stick of butter. I was like, I cut it off. Like, you cut it off, you stick it there, it's going to fall off the edge, and it does.
Yeah, it does. But
that's the way we did it.
You turn your ear of corn in your butter and salt it and pepper it.
So that was one of those culture things that I had to learn to figure out, the communal corn. And I'd never seen the little things that poke into the edge of an ear of corn. But once again, we were boys. We didn't have the patience to you stick it in, your hands won't get sticky. I was like, if your hands don't get sticky, what are you going to lick off it at the end of the meal? But wow, that has taken a turn. That is way too much information. If you're watching, Nana, Papa, I love you. Yeah. So food that we don't like. It's one of those things. Our tastes change sometimes. Different people. Ransom doesn't like pie. Doesn't matter. Now, occasionally we can make it in a square tin and call it a cobbler. It's okay.
He's okay with
Same exact thing. Put it in a round pan, call it a pie. I don't want a pie.
Not so much of that.
He's just not a pie person. He just doesn't like pie.
Oh, I love pie.
Yeah. Everybody loves pie, except for Ransom. He does not like pies of any kind. So we don't have a lot of pies around the house because he doesn't like pies. But I mentioned that.
Does he just sleep through March 14th and doesn't even...
He's fine with the math part of pie. He's good with that.
Oh, that's what that's for.
And every once in a while, he'll do like a chicken pot pie, But even that at the beginning, he was not too sure about the chicken pot pies. I don't know what it was. It was just a mental block. He didn't do pies and stuff like that.
You have to get him to try some of the Moravian chicken pies now that you're down here that you can find in the stores and places like that. So yeah,
we need to get that. But when you're doing something like Brussels sprouts with my mom or whatever, when they're trying to give you something, what is the line they usually use for you to get you to eat something that you don't want to eat? Did you ever get a line about that?
I tell my boys to hold their nose so they can't smell it, so they won't taste it.
Just taste it. Just get it down. Just get it down. That's right. You get they're starving kids out in Africa somewhere stories, but at the end it always came down to you need to eat it because it's good for you, right? Hey, you need this. It's good for you. You got to eat this stuff. And so whether it's our kids that need more calcium, and so you're trying to tell them, hey, you got to. You got to drink your milk or something, or if it's getting that protein in, and when your boys become teenagers, I'm sorry, but when they become teenagers and they start eating everything in your house, and at some point in time, they're playing sports. I know Carter's out there playing sports, and he's going to have to fuel up. He's going to have to put some food in his body in order to be able to maintain the level of energy that he's going to do. And we had to tell Ransom, you have to eat more. He was playing football and swimming at the same time. It's like over the summer they had their 2 days practices and their swim practices, and he would just try to eat what we were eating. It's like, well, you can't do that. In fact, he lost weight. He's skinny as a rail, but back then he was skinny as a rail. He lost weight, became slower as a swimmer over the summer that he was doing the workouts, and it was because at some point in time, you do that much work, you're losing muscle mass if you're not constantly refilling your body. And so we had to tell him, look, it's for your own good. You got to eat more. When we started, he would eat peanut butter. We'd buy him huge jars of peanut butter, and he would just sit there and spoon peanut butter by the mouthful, and still was not enough calories to put in his body for his body to build muscle mass while he was doing all this workout. And so we say it's for your own good. You know, it's what you need to fuel yourself up, that you have to be, you know, putting some of these things. And sometimes there's things that are distasteful,
Right.
that we got to put into our mouth or bodies. You know, you and I remember when medicine used to be terrible.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Nowadays it's like it tastes like bubble gum.
You can get your choice of flavors
That's
nowadays.
Right. That's right. But it used to be, I mean, kids don't understand the spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down song. They're like, what are you talking about? It's already sweet. I'm like, well, it wasn't
Right.
back in the day. It
tasted like
castor oil.
medicine.
Yeah. And so it's just good for you. And sometimes you have to do stuff that's distasteful, but you know deep down inside, oh, it's good for me to do that. It's quality. And that goes in a lot of things in life. You know, it goes, you know, if you're a person that's trying to lose weight and exercise, you know, and there's parts of it that are distasteful. It hurts, but it's good for you to do those things. You know, you're talking about tax season, you know, when it comes to your finances, there's things that are distasteful that you've got to, you know, I got to pay money for this. You know, I got to fix the car. I got to put new tires on or something like that. And it can be distasteful. You're like, man, that's really, really expensive.
It's tough.
But you don't want the alternative. You
Right.
you gotta do it, and so you do those things. And I think spiritually that happens a lot too, where we, you know, when we're called by God to do stuff, there's sometimes spiritually things that the rest of the world gets to do. The rest of the world without morals, the rest of the world without a sense of what sin is. They're out there doing stuff, and sometimes as a Christian, we can
Right.
look and say, man, I wish I could do that
Yeah.
stuff. And we don't. We don't do those things, and it can be tough for us sometimes.
Yeah, it's that word. I think about that word intentional, being intentional with what you do. And the former president of the Bible college I went to, Kenneth Ridings, he talked to us a lot. He was a mentor of mine. He's in heaven now. But he was like, you know, in Christ, we're free to do anything that we want to, but there are a lot of things that we ought not to want to do. And so that resonates with me, and being the intentional of understanding, you know, some of these things I don't want to do it because I'm being intentional and being a faithful follower of Jesus Christ, because this is something that he wouldn't want me to be a part of or to do. So
that's a great thing to, you know, to kind of to keep us focused on, you know, understanding that, yeah, we shouldn't want to. But even Paul himself says, hey, the things I want to do, I don't do, and the things that I don't want to do,
I do.
I do. And so, I mean, if Paul struggles with that, I mean, at some point in time, I think we've got to feel not better about ourselves, but at least accepting of the fact that we do live in a broken world, that we are sinners, and we're still journeying.
But I think it goes back to that word being intentional about. I think about what Peter wrote in, I think it was chapter 5 of 1 Peter, towards the end there, and he wrote, "Clothe yourselves with humility," something along those lines. I could be saying it wrong. And the idea, if I remember that right, was the idea of that word "clothe" was the idea of putting on an apron and being intentional about it. When you get up to go to do your job, you put on the stuff that you take to do your job, and something, you know, as a follower of Christ. And at that point in time, I think Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was talking about how a church functions.
Right.
You know, you have to put on this humility, just like you intentionally put on your apron. And so when you get up in the morning, you got to pick up those things, and you have to figuratively put them on and be ready to go, because if you don't, then everything's going to fall apart. So you have to be intentional about it.
And that's a tough thing to do. I mean, you know, wherever we are, that ability to be humble enough to say, you know, not my will but your will be done, and that can be a hard thing to do. It's not you know, it's not our natural inclination, but it is one of those outpourings of the fruit of the Spirit. You know, if the Spirit's living in our life, that self-control. And I know we don't talk about that a lot, but man, I think that's one of the linchpins to us really being Spirit-filled people, is the ability to be in control of the self. That the self doesn't run amok and do all the wanting it wants to do, but it allows for God to be able to work through you. But if you're not controlled in the self, you can quash the spirit in your life so many times by doing things that are intentionally sinful and intentionally separating yourself from God.
Sure.
And I think people forget that the talk about, hey, these sins, they're not arbitrary. God didn't just say, hey, green is sin today. He didn't, it's not an arbitrary thing.
Mm-hmm.
That these are things that God says, look, if you do these, they are destructive. Like he didn't say don't do these things just because, he just liked the shade of green today. He said don't do these things because if you do them, then the way I built you won't function properly.
Right.
And so while they may look fun and it may be neat, you could put a fork in your microwave and it'll make a really neat light show.
Sure.
For a little bit. until it stops making the light show. In our own lives, we can do the same thing. We can do things that intentionally for a time may seem really exciting.
For sure.
And may make a lot of sparks and cool things will be happening, but ultimately it's a damaging thing. Ultimately
right.
It's destructive. And
yeah, you can read about those. You just mentioned the fruit of the Spirit. Just a few verses before that, there's this whole, I call it the vices of the flesh.
Yeah.
And so you can read all about those. There, Paul lists out a pretty good list of those things. So.
When I lean forward, it's because people are putting comments on there. We're getting a lot of good corn talk going on in the comments. So if you want to share some more corn
I've got a corn
talk,
pudding recipe if anybody wants one. It's really good.
Pudding recipe. Yes. All right. That sounds good. I like the corn at the Thanksgiving, the one that's got the sour cream and the I don't know. That's just what corn talk. But being able to look at that list of vices connected with the fruit of the Spirit, I think is a powerful thing for us. In fact, we're going to talk about something like that in the verse that we're going to read today, because we didn't talk a lot of church business. I know we do announcements because we want to keep you up to date on stuff. Church business meeting is this Wednesday coming up.
Tomorrow night.
And so that's going to be coming up. Or the church newsletter comes out the last Sunday of the month or the first Sunday of the month. So we're going to have our church newsletter, the calendar's coming out. So some things that are going like that. We've got Easter coming up. Sure. So, Palm Sunday, and then we're going to do an Easter egg hunt on the Saturday before Easter, and then Easter coming. So a lot of great opportunities that are coming up. But at the same time, there are some things that are happening, business wise in the church. We just had a meeting on Sunday that was anticipated, but sometimes those anticipated things are also things that lead to some nervousness and some tension to stuff. And so there's been some nerves and tensions about some things that are going on business wise in the church, and it leads us to ask the question, well, how do we act in those situations? How do we see if we're the people that are demonstrating the fruit of the Spirit, or if we're the sort of people that are maybe leaning the other way, not demonstrating the fruit of the Spirit, and seeing those other vices that come through. And I picked a story out of the Old Testament because I think it really shows us a character in the Old Testament that actually is being encouraged to do something that God doesn't want him to do. Most of our stories in the Bible are stories of people doing what God wants them to do. But this is a guy that's being asked, in fact, trying to be paid to do something that God doesn't want him to do. And it's something that he's done before in the past. He's not, this is not something that he's got a moral problem with doing the thing that he's being paid for, at least in his own mind. But it's the story of Balaam. Now, Balaam was a prophet. Now, he's not one of the Israelite prophets. He's a prophet kind of in the land of Canaan. It says he's up in the Euphrates area, but a prophet in that area during the time that Israel has just left Pharaoh in Egypt, and they are coming up to try to take over the promised land. So kind of get that in your mind. This is in Numbers chapter 22. And Balak, who is the king at that time, not of the Israelites, but of one of the countries that Israel is heading up to go see, he has decided that the nation of Israel is so large and they have been so successful in the military things that they've had to do since they left Egypt, that Israel will probably overwhelm their country. And so what he's going to do is he's going to hire Balaam, who is a prophet, and have him come and do sacrifices and pronounce a curse on the nation of Israel, so that bad things happen to them, and that the nation of Israel will not succeed and not come into their territory and take it over. So the king sends people up there to talk to Balaam and secure his services. And Balaam's like, okay, this is what I do. It's what he does. He's known for it. But he goes and he says he inquires of the Lord, and it's all capital letters. So in the Bible, it's saying he inquired of Yahweh. And he said, no, don't do that. The people that are coming up are blessed. So don't do that. And then the king sends a more prominent member of his staff to go up there and says, you're going to do it? And he's like, well, no, I already told you I'm not going to do it, but stay the night and I'll inquire of the Lord, Yahweh, over the evening. And over the evening, it says that he was given permission to go with him. It said that God had given him permission. It's a real interesting little turn of phrase. Since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I'm telling you. And so he gets up and he goes with them. And it says God's anger goes with them. And so you know the story, right? You know, he hops on his donkey. He heads that direction. His donkey looks up and sees an angel of the Lord standing in front of him. And he runs off the path. And Balaam curses him out and beats him. And then he sees the angel again, and the donkey tries to squeeze past the angel, and it squishes him up against a wall or something and hurts his leg, and he beats him and gets him on path. And then finally he's in a place where the donkey can't turn away or get away, and so the donkey just sits down on the road. And that's where we're going to pick up. We're going to read from that point. Numbers 22, beginning in verse 26. It says, then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn either to the right or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat it with his staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth. This is the donkey's mouth. And it said to Balaam, what have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? And Balaam answered the donkey, you've made me a fool. You've made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. Whew. And then the donkey, he's having an actual conversation with the donkey, all right? Then the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? No, he said. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. And the angel of the Lord asked him, why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you, because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared it. And Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now, if you are displeased, I will go back. And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but speak only what I tell you. And so Balaam went with Balak's officials. And then we see kind of where it goes from there. Balak is like, all right, let's do this thing. Sets up altars and they worship. And then Balaam comes out and says, I bless the nation of Israel. And then he's like, no, I want you to curse them. Let's go down there so you can see them with your eyes. So you can see how bad they are. Let's do it again. Sacrifice stuff. Pray. I bless the nation of Israel. He's like, no. He does it 7 different times where he pronounces different blessings on the nation of Israel and cursings on those people that stand against him. And Balak eventually just gets furious with Balaam and sends him off and sends him away. But what I find interesting about that is is in this story. Balaam is a prophet. He's looking to God. He comes to ask God. And at the beginning, he's like, okay, God says, don't do this. But there's still that desire of him to go. When the officials come back the second time, Balaam doesn't say, look, this is already settled, go away. He says, well, stay around. Let me see if I can change God's mind. Let me see if I can get a different result. And at that point, God's like, well, clearly you didn't listen to me, so do whatever you want to do. Go ahead and go. Was God happy with it? No, God wasn't happy with it. It said God was angry when he went. And so God put the angel of the Lord there. Now, the angel gave the same message that Balaam had at the beginning, which was, if you go, speak only my words. The angel had to give it. And when the angel gave it, after those 3 incidences and the talk with the donkey and all that stuff, that's when I think it really set in. Balaam's like, oh my goodness, this was a serious thing. And I think sometimes we can be like Balaam. We can just be, we can be all business, doing the things that we did, day in and day out. I mean, Balaam was called because this is what he does. It's his job. He's a prophet. He does these curses and does these blessings, and he hears from people and he prays to God for people. It's what he does. It's his job day in and day out. But somewhere in the midst of it, he got on the wrong side of what God wanted him to do. And he wasn't willing to adapt himself without God doing something really radical, having a donkey come out and set him straight. Go back and read your old King James version. It doesn't use the word donkey.
Yeah.
All right. And you get a better idea of what God is trying to set straight in Balaam's life. And I think sometimes in the church we can get like that ourselves. As a pastor, I know that I've been there before, where I've had to go to God and say, hey, God, this was an idea that I had going on in my mind, but man, there are things that aren't going right here. Exactly. There seems to be obstacles in the wall, in the way, and just being able to sit down and look to God and say, God, I need to be, that word you used earlier, humble, right. And I need to be intentionally following you. I've got to realize that what seems right, to me, may not be what you're calling me to do, right. And to see the extent to which God went in order to help Balaam get on the right track.
Right. Yeah. And I just want to say this. He mentioned something being an obstacle in the way and that sort of thing. Just because there's an obstacle in the way doesn't mean God doesn't want you to take it or handle it or something like that. He puts that obstacle there maybe to direct you away from it, but it also may be he's putting that obstacle there to get you to recognize there's an opportunity and that you need to deal with that.
To give you clarity.
To give you clarity on that. So discernment is vital in understanding that as well.
Because ultimately, I mean, at the end of this thing, Balaam says, hey, I've seen that you have been an obstacle in
right.
front of me. I'm going to turn around now. And God's like, no. Now that you know the gravity of what's going on here, I want you to go forward
right.
with it. It's just before you didn't realize, before you crossed these obstacles, you didn't realize how important those people were that are coming out of the nation of
sure.
Egypt. You didn't know, but now you know how serious I take this. And it's just it's an interesting thing to see what God did in order to restore Balaam to the proper place where he was supposed to be speaking.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah. So it's a powerful thing. And like I said, it's an opportunity for that humility, for some introspection, because that's where Balaam ultimately gets to, is he looks inside his life and he ultimately comes to the conclusion that it is better to follow God than to follow Balak. And Balak has the ability to kill him at any time, and so it's not like he is obstacle free when he takes God's path. When he takes God's path, there's still obstacles, but God is empowering him with the things that he needs to say, and ultimately God's protecting him in those things that are going on. So let's just seek God in that way in our lives. Make sure that as we're proceeding and going, ask ourselves sometimes, hey, is today the day that the angel of the Lord is standing in front of me, and find out. Well, we're going to close in a word of prayer. I know Philip's got he's got a meeting with some of our people from the school over here, and so we're excited about those relationships. You want to close us in prayer real quick?
I'll pray, and then I'm going to buzz on out of here.
All right.
Lord Jesus, thank you for this time that we can open up your word and study it a little bit more and to learn a little bit more about how we need to interact with you and to interact with the people around us, and how we need to recognize and honor you. And so just allow your word to just continue to wash over us today, and to bring it to our mind as we're dealing with people, or we're dealing with ourselves, or with dealing situations that might seem out of control, or or harmful to us. Help us to see you in everything that we do. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching us. Thanks for all the great corn advice that's out there, and and for some peaches things. There's some people that think that me not liking peaches. I don't like cherries either. So don't like cherries or peaches. But we'll get there. They're some of my family's favorites, so I get in trouble for that. But we love you guys. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. We will see you tomorrow night.
Take care.
Real quickly. Kid stuff and you stuff, is it happening tomorrow?
Still
night?
going tomorrow.
Still going tomorrow. Even so, a business meeting, but we still have the kid stuff and you stuff that's going on. So I want to encourage you to be a part of that.
Sure.
All right. God bless you all. We'll see you then. Bye. Thank you, Philip.
Yes, sir. Let me get out here and see what.